My name is Stone Dean. I'm the Executive Vice President for National Taiwan University. So a warm welcome for everybody to join tonight's talk. And especially a really warm welcome to Steve Chen and his family. 那今天真的很高兴哈，我们请到陈世军先生，然后来跟我们做一场演讲。那这一场演讲里面也有我们杨宗岭杨教授，杨医师，也是我们的这个产学总中心的这个副主任，来当一个 moderator 跟他对话的一个炉边对话哈。这里有炉边对话。我们这一次真的很用心啊，为什么很用心呢？那原因是因为说。我刚才才跟这个 Steve 讲说，我们花了约略2年的时间，trying to invite him to come to NTU to talk to our students and also our family, not only students but also professors and our colleagues at National Taiwan University. 那这个会议呢，其实是这一次的演讲呢是国立台湾大学系统而且还是台大文化基金会，还有国立台湾大学一起来举办的，所以funding 的 agency 是我们这个文化基金会。然后当然讲这个好有点复杂了哈，只是我把 credit 要给这个文化基金会。那他们在做这个文化科技的这个讲座的时候，就希望能够邀请非常在国际上非常知名的，在国内非常知名的不管是科学家也好，或者是创业家也好。或者是在文化界有知名的人士，可以来跟大家来分享。那台大一直在人才培育的这一部分，我刚才突然一直看到我们这个应该是这个星光集团的哈，这个我的好朋友一直在那里，我突然觉得说你好像在 spy on me，但是我今天特别兴奋，特别兴奋是因为说我们国际上这个创新创业非常成功的例子不多。其实蛮多的啦，但是这么大的规模其实不多。然后又是我们可以认得的对象，那其实是更加的难得。然后Steve 这一次要来跟我们分享他在20年 Silicon Valley 的一些经验。那当然这个20年间，可能看到很多新的创意、新的公司、新的组合、新的团队，建立新的公司、新的大楼、新的企业。那甚至呢？替人类创造了一个新的平台，改变我们的生活，改变我们的习惯。那我刚才在讲说 ，YouTube 其实真的是改变我们的生活习惯了哈。那有没有人？我问你个问题，有没有人一天没有用到 YouTube 的？来举手一下。真的啊，你不该来。There's a door. 几乎大家都会用到，像我们台大很多的课程也在 YouTube 上面都有。那我们还有老师教 AI 的，他的这个课程内容都在 YouTube 上面，所以 YouTube become a very good media for teaching, for learning, for entertainment. 那 for almost everything. So 这个是一个非常非常难得机会，所以我自己觉得很高兴有机会来请到Steve 来今天跟大家分享。那另外呢，因为Steve is going to give his talk in English.And we need not a translator. We need a guy who is dialoguing with him. And 那个杨宗岭老师呢，是我们的产学总中心的副主任，那医学院的医师啊哈。那所以各位等一下也要稍微认识他一下。你不仅是来这边创业了哈，要有好的身体才能够创业。所以我们今天的安排非常好，有一个医师，有一个这个创业家在这里。所以我们是不是用热烈掌声欢迎2位？
HS is our great honor here to have Steve here. HS is my close friend, and we're very happy because he told me that this is the first time for him to visit here. So HS, we have the biggest hope for you because you are so many fans here. So they just want to join this activity for your experience sharing. So HS, I think it is our a great honor here to have you here, and also we need to thank our organization and effort from our EVP in the so to help us and all our colleagues here to join us for this event. So today I think we have several programs here, and first we want to ask Steve to share us his experience in Silicon Valley for 20 years. And the other part of our event tonight, we are just open question for all of you. If you have some special question, you can just raise your hand. This is okay. You can just speak with Steve about any question you want to ask. And the other thing is, you don't want to raise your hand, you can just we will have a QR code on the screen, so you can just use your iPhone, your cell phone to scan and just type your questions. If you want to use the Chinese, it's fine. I just know that Steve Chinese is also Mandarin is also okay and very good, so probably he can read all the characters by himself. So in that case, you can just try to ask any question you want. So I think we will just try to do that, and hopefully everybody will enjoy tonight. Okay, the event tonight. Okay, so I think I don't need to introduce Steve anymore because he's well known for what he has done for the past 20 years. So Steve, you want to say something to us?
Yeah, probably first is it's good to be here, but apologies for not speaking better Chinese. So that's to start. I think it's great to be here. I mean, I think many people know that I was originally born in Taiwan, but left at a pretty early age, at about second grade, which is the level of my Chinese, about second grade. And then spent a lot of time, mostly growing up in the Chicago area, and then from the Champaign-Urbana University of Illinois is where I studied computer science, and it was also there that I ended up meeting many of the folks that were in sort of this first generation of internet. Of course, Mark Andreessen, the person that started Netscape, I think he left U of I around 1995, 1996, and he started the first wave of Web 1.0 companies. And then I went to Silicon Valley in 1999, and I was one of the first engineers that joined PayPal at the time. And even then, it was, I don't know if people in this room used ICQ ever, but way long ago, I think that was like instant messaging 1.0. That was how we conducted even at that time, that was how we conducted the interview. But then after that, it was, are you able to come out next Monday to start at Silicon Valley? So that was a one-way ticket to Silicon Valley. And then we'll talk a lot more in detail, but I spent 20 years there in Silicon Valley until 2019, and everything from PayPal, eBay acquisitions, IPOs, YouTube, Google, starting different things like that. And then in 2019 was the big decision to come back to Taiwan, and it was originally only supposed to be coming back for just at most 2 years, but a lot of changes happened with, I think, the big things with COVID and with just how much we've enjoyed being here in Taiwan. That it's like 5 years have passed and we're still here right now. And I think the interesting part right now is trying to. There are actually a lot of I think similar entrepreneurs with Taiwanese American backgrounds that are all here in Taiwan right now, that have done something overseas, that have started companies and sold companies in Silicon Valley, that are all here in Taiwan right now, and they're all looking at trying to kind of do their next startup or do their next set of investments here in Taiwan. And so I think it's a pretty exciting period right now to be in Taiwan, to be in Asia, and then to be in the sort of tech startup scene in general. But I think we'll get into much of that right now. It's just the introduction.
Yeah, actually, I think it's very important because Steve actually he has some experience in all fields. Actually, I think many students they want to pursue even after you graduate from NTU. Because right now I know I just want to start from the very beginning because you was graduated from the UIUC and was studying the computer science, right? And I think it's very important for you to have this kind of skill in the following, even for startup or many different your tribe. So can you just share with our students here, because you learn anything you learn from your school, your university, is important for you to have a to do a staff work or anything?
I mean, I think the kind of the fundamental skill sets are definitely to be learned in the school system. I mean, I think the different schools have different systems, right? And I think a more traditional style is there's a single vertical that you're focusing on. So at U of I at the time, certainly it was just which college are you going to be in? It's going to be College of Engineering. Within that, what are you going to study in computer science? But really on the first day of your job, if it's to go work at Microsoft or to Google, you're going to find out that there are many things that you didn't learn in, but at the time, to be fair, no college was teaching a lot of the requirements that you needed, the knowledge that you need in the real industry, in the real workforce, right? I think that many more schools now are doing more collaborative hybrid programs where you can have both, maybe it's a little marketing and business background plus a technology background. But like most of the startups in Silicon Valley, they're always started by co-founders, not by one single founder. And usually the co-founders are coming from different backgrounds. Like when we started, when PayPal was started, the two main founders there was Max Levchin, who is my friend from U of I, but from the technology side, and then Peter Thiel from more of the business MBA Stanford side. And then same thing when we started with YouTube, it was Chad Hurley, who I'd worked with for 5-6 years at PayPal, and he was more on the product and design side, and I was coming in from the engineering side. And I think many of the startups are always kind of in that fashion, co-founders of different backgrounds, because the way that a lot of the education system, it doesn't focus on the industry, it's teaching you things that you need from an academic side. I think the only person that always starts companies by himself is just Elon or something. I think because early on, I worked with Elon back at PayPal when X.com and PayPal, they ended up merging in a 50% merger. And it was just, it was, Peter and Max and a lot of people on the PayPal side, and there was just Elon coming from the X.com side. But everything else that he had started, it was just himself.
Yeah, so I think it's very important because Steve always serves as a founder and also CTO, right? Sometimes in many companies you also serve as CTO because it's a kind of technology background really help you to do some, even for setting up the YouTube, you need to have a very strong background. So I think the technology background is so important if you really want to do something different, right? And the other thing is that when you just try to you graduate from the UIUC, then I remember you told us that you just bought a one-way flight, right?
Yeah.
You just go directly to the Bay Area. You just want to went there to do something different, not in the Chicago area. So can you just share us with about your decision and your feeling during that time?
No, I think that it's definitely something that more generically, if kind of the opportunity is out there, I think it's worth not missing that opportunity. And I can say that for almost just many things in my own career. It's not just joining a startup. It's not just flying out to Silicon Valley on a one-way ticket, like you mentioned, but even like starting YouTube, that was a pretty quick decision. Again, even selling YouTube to Google, that was like a 5-day decision to sell YouTube. Buying my first house, again, it was like one weekend. It's like, okay, we're gonna have to do this, or else somebody else is going to buy this house instead. It's not. Now that I have like kids, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to everyone to do because there's been, I think in the 20 years that I was in Silicon Valley, you can talk about the YouTube, Google, PayPal cases, but there were cases where we bought Delicious from Yahoo, and then we tried to do something there, and that failed. I mean, there were failures as well throughout those 20 years. But I think the one thing that remained consistent has always been, look, if you have a good idea, it's better to try it and fail rather than, I think, look back and regret that especially if another competitor does the same thing as you just a few months, weeks later, you would just kind of regret, why didn't I do this when I had the idea first?
Yeah, I think it's very important because it's a kind of entrepreneurship, because it means that you just, if you find any chance over there, you will never waste time, you just take risks, right? Yeah, and this is another point you can just share with us because, for example, right now we have many students here, and they all have a very high scores to pass the entrance examination. And he always be the first one, the number one university in Taiwan.
Yeah.
So actually, during that time, if you have a very very good career here, even they just graduate, they can just find a very good job.
Yeah.
So during that time, they just think whether they need to go, to do stop or just to find a good job. It's a kind of a cost, opportunity cost. So sometimes we just discuss with our faculty and also some staff here and also our students to share with our experience. It's a kind of the opportunity cost sometimes is high. If you just go for a stop for several years, you fail. But you don't have a chance to find another job sometimes. So you can just, in that case, you can just encourage our students. If they really have a good idea, really want to go for that, they just, forget everything, just go. Is that right? Oh, yeah.
I mean, I remember when YouTube was just starting, and the resource that you need the most for any startup is actually, funding and everything, but the hardest thing is actually in Silicon Valley to find is actually engineers, because there are so many good opportunities. And so the most common conversation as a co-founder, CTO of YouTube, was actually trying to recruit engineers to come in. And all the engineers from early YouTube were actually ex-PayPal engineers, and that's the most number of people that I knew were all PayPal engineers. And it was trying to, you have to sit down with the engineer to convince them that it's a good idea to quit their job and lose whatever health insurance and everything that they have, their 401k plan and everything, to join your startup where there was nothing on the horizon that was going to be making money. There was no, you're just basically just barely past your first round of fundraising. You are burning so much money on just the bandwidth and the storage costs. But you have to convince them to quit their whatever $150,000, $200,000 a year job to join, and you can't pay them very much either. In Silicon Valley for early stage startups, it's all equity pretty much. I mean, equity is the important thing. You're maybe getting 0.25%, 0.5% of the company, which is pretty good, but you're not getting paid, and so it's hard to convince them. But the way that I would try would always be the one positive thing that you could see at YouTube was the growth. You could see the numbers and the metrics, and every 1 to 1.5 weeks, the number of video views, the number of videos uploaded, number of users created, that was doubling, right? And so you could see for 4 or 5 months, it's been doubling every week and a half. That was the only thing. Everything else is it would make you scared. Well, but if you show that to a new person that's going to be starting and they're making their decision, the way that I would phrase it is, look, I have no idea where you're going to be or where I'm going to be or where YouTube's going to be in 6 months from now. But what I can say is in 6 months, you're going to be and I'm going to be out of a job because YouTube's going to fail. We're going to burn too much capital. Or the other side, which is you're going to be a part of the team that built the fastest, hottest growing video site on the internet. And I think that's not everybody decided to leave and to join. But I think that's an individual kind of question for everybody, right? Is that worth taking the risk? But I think in general, it's not like, it's not that big of a risk. You're still going to be getting something at the end of it. Like you'll see many people on LinkedIn from Silicon Valley that have like 10 years, 15 years of work history, but it's all failed startups. But I think like you're learning something every time you're doing it. I mean, it's I think part of the experience there, and ultimately I think all those learnings can be applied to your next, whatever it is that you want to do next, to be joining, to be creating, to be co-founding another startup.
Yeah, actually, I think it's a very important point because right now we in Taiwan we have a very very good companies here, and it's just a global big company, and actually they can provide very good salary for the new just graduate the student just graduate from the university. So in that case, they just wondering whether they really need to go for startups, because sometimes they can have a pressure not only for himself but also from their family. They say if you just go to a company and you find a job, you have a very, very good income. Consider your classmates; they have making a lot of money. But right now you're in a startup, right?
My mom never agreed when we started YouTube. She thought, "Are you crazy to start YouTube?" She thought it was crazy to be flying to Silicon Valley on a one-way ticket. I don't know. Maybe sometimes don't listen to your mom or something. Not you, Ethan.
So I think this is very important because you will have a good support. Sometimes I just try to talk with some, the young guys. They just want to do something different and just want to have their startups. They say sometimes they have a strong belief and they create very big versions, but sometimes they need to persuade first is their family. If they have a wife or even a girlfriend, they need to persuade. They want to quit them job because they can just find a very good job here, but they just try to do something different. But the risk is high because if they turn out to be nothing. So I think this is very important because during that time, I don't know whether it's because you have worked in PayPal for 5 or 6 years, right? So, do you think it's the experience in PayPal really help you too? Because it's very famous. Because right now we call it the PayPal mafia, right? Yes. Elon and Peter Thiel and everybody here, even the chat, Harry, they all one of the famous PayPal mafia. So I don't know whether the first 6-year experience when working in the PayPal really help you to have a strong belief you can do something different and without any fears about fail or anything like that.
No, I think absolutely right. I think PayPal, when I joined, it was like November of 1999. Again, it was just a few months after joining PayPal, there was a huge dot-com crash where all the first wave of dot-com crashes where it was nearly impossible to fundraise again. And so all the startups and companies had to find out, in order to survive, they're not going to get any more investment. So in order to survive, they had to innovate somehow to be able to monetize, to be able to, cut costs on the operations. And I remember that time was when PayPal introduced its I think it's 1.9% fee, which is something that they never wanted to do if they could continue to get fundraising at the time, But I think that they had to do that much earlier to be able to continue to receive, just to keep it operational, because they knew that they weren't going to get another funding round from Sequoia Capital or anyone else during that phase. So that was interesting to go through that dot-com crash, and then coming out of that dot-com crash, it took a long time to have the VCs and the investors get more confident about investing again. So that was all pretty good for me, because I think that those 5-6 years of going through that experience, going through it's very similar to what YouTube eventually had to do, but it's competition against eBay for a lot of it. I think for the services of PayPal at the time, there's the P2P payment service, but it's not something that you need on a daily basis. But the one area that was missing that actually was eBay with auctions, like where hundreds and thousands and millions of auctions would end every day. And at the end of the auction, eBay didn't provide a payment service, and so, but every auction ended up needing a payment to be made and shipping to be done. And that's where PayPal came in, and that's where it was able to really get its viral growth from. It was the same thing, like I think YouTube early on in 2005, again, this is like dating myself, but this is before Facebook. There was another service, like MySpace at the time. I don't know if anybody ever used that here, but MySpace, same thing as eBay. They didn't have a service to host videos. It was like, I mean, I guess like imagine a Facebook that can only host photos, but like YouTube, one of the first things in 2005 that we allowed was that, well, a few things, like you can upload any video that you want from any kind of codec, any kind of camera, we'll automatically transcode it. You don't have to download anything to watch the video, you can just watch it inside the browser. But I think more importantly is you don't have to go to youtube.com to watch it. You could watch it on anywhere as long as you embed that video onto your website. And you see that today even, like I think when news articles are talking about something, they embed the YouTube video in there. But at the time, like MySpace was the most popular social network site out there, but they didn't allow for videos to be embedded. And that was the one thing that we were able to use. We immediately found a lot of content creators that were willing to upload something and then use it on a daily basis, just like eBay was with PayPal. And that really started as more people started seeing started seeing videos on MySpace. They would click on it, that would take them to YouTube. Then they would stay on YouTube and then also learn that they could also for free upload their videos onto their MySpace/YouTube page as well. And that was how I think both in the case of PayPal and eBay, in the case of YouTube and MySpace, that was how these companies in Silicon Valley are able to kind of virally grow without any fundraising. It was all just viral growth where it was the users themselves that were trying to promote the service, whereas it wasn't about like how much money to be spending on ads on other places to get people to come.
Yeah, actually from your sharing, I realized probably the very first big idea comes to your mind, how to create a YouTube, apart from when you work in the PayPal and dealing with the eBay, because during that time is your big customer, right? Mm. So during that time, you just wondering whether is it possible to share not only photos in later, you're going to share the video later in the photos, right? So I also realized that after the PayPal, you went to the Facebook for 0 months, right? So it's a quite amazing experience, because if you have a kind of CV, someone has been to the PayPal and Facebook, and especially in the very beginning, so it's a very amazing experience. So I think probably during that time you went to Facebook and you find they only share the photos there, right? So you just come up to your mind, you make stronger, you think this is very right time to do a start for the video sharing. Is that true?
Yeah, that was like a pretty early time, just a few months, but it was still when Facebook was really small back in 2005. I shared like one table or one desk. It was just me and Mark Zuckerberg at this desk. But in 2005, Facebook was still pretty small. Facebook at the time, Mark had just left Harvard and he just moved to Silicon Valley. I think at that time, you can only register and log into Facebook if you had a @harvard.edu email address. And then I think and so you had to be a Harvard student to be able to even use the service. I think their expansion, the first level of expansion was just to more.edu, more universities. And then I had left after that, but they started then. I think the next wave was going, they just knew that people weren't going to be staying in school forever. So what if they have a Facebook account today, but then next year they graduate and go do something else? They had to find ways to be able to continue to keep those users around. And so I think they went, I think, for the pre-college group first, but then eventually that was obvious, like they had to expand. And so they went and opened it up for everybody that regardless of your email address. But in 2005, when we started YouTube, we had no idea. I had no idea how big Facebook was going to be. So in some ways, I think if I had known Facebook was going to be this next $1 trillion company, maybe I just stayed at Facebook and not have done all the extra all-nighters for YouTube,
So actually, I think because I realized sometimes the timing is very important. Because if you have this kind of concept in mind, but you just want to do your stuff at YouTube in probably 1999, right? So it was a big time, because during that time, if you really want to do to go for stuff to establish YouTube, during that time the .com bubble, and it's very difficult for you. You really have your company start established during that time. So how can you decide the timing? Because sometimes sometimes the timing is as a kind of we don't know how to find the right time to have this the invention or innovation to be realized in our real life.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's I got to say, there is risk involved with doing any form of startup versus a more solid career path, and I think the luck and timing is a large part of that. I think that YouTube was only possible, I think, in 2005. Any earlier than 2005, it wasn't able to actually have the video codecs play within the browser. So you had to download something, whether you were on a Windows machine or Mac or whatever, Linux machine. You would have had to download something in order to play it back. Or at least download something into your browser, some kind of plugin into your browser to be able to do it. It was only in late 2004 that they decided to add this codec that we transcoded all the videos to. But I mean, even beyond that, just bandwidth was still pretty expensive back then, so a lot of people were still using dial-ups at that time. The amount of this was before Amazon Web Service, AWS. This is before Google Cloud. This is before any of the cloud services from Microsoft came about. Where, if you want to those days in 2005, if you want to roll out a global web service, the hardest parts are actually on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. going into you have these huge data centers, huge warehouses of all the machines. And you're the one that has to wait there when you order these 42U racks. They can store whatever 42 machines, and then you have to be there when they deliver. You have to order 4 to 6 weeks in advance before they deliver it. It's not like today where it's you could go on to Amazon and you can just make a few clicks, and then within 15 minutes you can have as much of the machines that you want, as much of the CPUs as you want. So back then, it was a lot more work to get all of that started. And this is 2005, but I also think that if YouTube didn't start in 2005, I also think that somebody else would have started just another version of it. I think this idea of using video on the internet was I think more of it was with timing than almost anything else. And so I think 2005 was so important for us, but it's there was no way we would have known that. In hindsight, now looking back, of course, it's clear that that was the time. But there were a lot of questions back then about is it even possible to use the internet as the back end to share videos, to watch videos? Is it going to be always too expensive? Are there going to ever be advertisers that want to pay for ads on these videos? What about, and some of these issues we had to face at YouTube, what about the copyrighted content? What about music content? And so there were so many issues that needed to be worked out, that being the first, first mover in this entire field, being the first company that was providing this service, YouTube had to be the one that figured all this out to make it possible.
So I think it's interesting because before you started the YouTube, you work in the Facebook, right? So have you ever mentioned about your idea to Mark? Because they told him that not only photo, we want video. Have you ever shared with him about his idea before?
Oh man, I wonder if Mark's gonna ever see this video. Because my answer is gonna vary based on whether or not he watches this. Well, I think one thing is like I know that the reputation I have there was like I never like returned my like laptop that Facebook gave me from a pretty early, it was like 2-3 months after like YouTube already launched and we got our fundraising or something, and then one day I walked back to Facebook to return the laptop, and I think inside Facebook they were always asking whether or not YouTube was built on a Facebook laptop or not, which it wasn't. We never, I just didn't go back to return it. But like, I don't know if people here, anybody's actually worked at Facebook. Like that, the PHP code that's there. Anyway, Mark didn't write perfect code, I'll say that. Yeah.
So the lesson from
Maybe he's a better CEO than a CTO or something.
So actually, the lesson we learned from here is actually your background knowledge and your skill is very important, because the CTO here, he can do something good for coding, even for the good algorithm or the interface. So I think this is important to set up a very good, because if you have some user, they just try to log in the YouTube in the very first time. If they have a bad experience, they don't want to try it anymore, because probably they can go to other website or to try to find others. So,
but I would actually, but one thing, I mean, to add on to Mark's credit for Facebook is that, okay, he was probably not the best, engineer, PHP coder from Harvard. But he was obviously one of the most successful businessmen to come out of Harvard. I do think that, look, it's not if you have a great idea, don't be frightened to start it because you feel that you need to be at a certain level. Yeah, I think like at that early stage, especially in Silicon Valley, like to prototype something, to get it out there, the skill set, there's still a minimum skill set that's required, right? But I think like I think it's more important to be able to still take that first step and to actually do it, and then you're going to see it rise up, and then it'll scale up in time. But you don't have to figure out the super long-term plans about how are you going to take this idea and go public with it before you take the first step in trying it.
And I remember one time you told me that actually in the very beginning of the YouTube, it's a kind of the dating website, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also a dating website. I remember you told me that in the very beginning you just want to set up a dating website for the girls to meet the boy makes girls, but actually said there's no one in the YouTube. In the very beginning, no one want to log in the YouTube, so you just change the strategy to open to everything, right? And I remember Facebook is also the same. I think Mark told that in the very, very beginning, it's a kind of a try to know some girls in the college, so they just set up a Facebook. So I think all the students here, it is important to find a boyfriend and girl's friend. Is the very first step for you to have a start. Is that right? So actually, I think, can you just share with us, because I know in the very beginning you just try to set up a YouTube. It's kind of, in the very beginning, it's a kind of dating website, but there's no response. So how you feel during that time? You just say it is a fail, or it's a failure, or you just want to do something different?
Yeah, I think there were a few times. I think so. We started. We like. The domain youtube.com was registered in February of 2005. We launched it in like May of 2005 to the public. I remember Google Video came out in like April of 2005. We had a meeting then about should we keep working on YouTube because it'll be difficult to compete against Google Video, especially when Google was already a public IPO company, and we were paying for everything still like out of our own pockets when it comes to the machines, data centers, bandwidth cost. But we said, we've already come this far. We've already spent this much time. Like, it's only 1 week or 2 weeks away. Let's just get this out there and we'll see. But the same question we asked ourselves again when 0 users, 0 videos uploaded after like a week on YouTube when it was like a dating site. We had like another similar meeting to say, should we give up or should we try something else? And it was another quick decision to say, well, we've already done all this. Let's just open it up to just any kind of video rather than just specific dating videos. And then it was changing. I think like you used to be able to rate videos with hearts, but they became, I think, stars and different things. Like it wasn't that big of a change on the back end, so we were able to get all the changes on the UI, whatever, out in a night. And the next day, when you launched YouTube again, the next version, it was just all for generic videos, and that's when the videos started coming in a lot more back then. But there are so many of these incidents where I think pretty key decisions had to be made, but it was more. I think again, it was more important to have those decisions made rather than just wait and then, kind of procrastinate, because I think it's you kind of, I think, usually know what the right answer is already.
Yeah, actually, when we just review the history, I think you already made a very good decision, because during the time you just faced some big challenge for a start. Because in the very first time you launch your probably the first version, but no response. So it's just a kind of the big shock for the start, because they just are patient. They have build a very good thing for everybody, but no one appreciate, right? So it's the first challenge, and the other thing is that the big competitor just show up in the very just a couple months later. So it's a kind of another big challenge. So I think probably during that time you just made a very, very good decision to continue continue YouTube, right? So I think everybody tonight we have this event, and I just recently made a question from the friends and students. They always want to ask you. So during that time you just try to think whether you can continue or just try to find. For example, we know finally the MA by Google, right? So can you just share with us your decision and how you make decision? Because we know one is that how you decide to sell YouTube. The other thing is that we know probably the history we just review for everybody, because during that time there was a big the Yahoo, right? They also want to compete because during that time Yahoo and Google, they probably the size, and they just want to have this kind of change. So can you just share with us these two important questions? Why did you want to sell the YouTube? And the other thing is that why Google, not YouTube, not Yahoo, right?
I think YouTube in its early days, it was growing quickly. Every time we bring in another 42U racks of machines, the numbers would double, which just means that it was already performing at a kind of an artificial ceiling, as in it was because of the lack of enough computing power, lack of enough bandwidth that was actually preventing the growth. So every time we put in new servers, it would actually grow. And so it was growing so quickly, but the costs were so high back then in 2005, early 2006, when it comes to bandwidth costs. We were using up all the bandwidth that was available in Northern California, so then we had to start going into Southern California to open up data centers. We were using up all the data centers, and a lot of these data centers back then, they had basically double the bandwidth. They had one line that was going into the data centers, and then they usually have another 100% backup in case the first one. But then we started buying up all the backup bandwidth that was all out there. And then we started flying out to places like New Jersey, and again, 7 a.m. waking up at Saturday in New Jersey, just to install more and more racks of machines. But the most expensive part of that wasn't even so much the machines, but it was the bandwidth. There wasn't that much bandwidth out there at the time. I mean, I think like, there's the whole thing with like the fair use and about trying to put all bandwidth usage as the same cost. But I think back then, like YouTube was taking up 10 to 20% of like, depending on when, but during those 1.5, 2 years, like 10 to 20% of all the internet's traffic was using YouTube. And even today, like almost the bulk of the internet traffic is going to like Netflix or YouTube right now. But eventually, you can do these, what they're called is like a peering agreement. And so they have these events every year where the big networks out there, they would actually write contracts to another. And so it would basically say like, for example, if a lot of people from Toronto, Canada, they were all using YouTube, at these events, you would find other people that were attending these events that would manage these networks, and we would work out deals which says, instead of going across the open internet, anything that comes from Toronto that's watching YouTube, you can directly come to us, and you don't go across, and then you just meet at a data center somewhere, and then you just plug your two networks together, and then so these are like they're called like peering agreements, and after you get to a certain size of bandwidth, like ironically, it becomes cheaper and cheaper again because YouTube was so expensive for all of these telecom companies to support. But then if they stopped supporting it, their users, their subscribers they would abandon them and go to a competitor. So they had to support it. And so they do these peering agreements. So at first it was scalability. That was the thing that we didn't know if we could solve because of the cost and everything. But as YouTube continued to grow, that part became easier and easier and easier. The problem that became harder and harder and harder for YouTube as it grew was actually on the very much on the legal side, especially in the U.S. back then in 2005. I think you have like Warner Music, EMI, Sony, BMG, Universal. There were 4 big music labels in the U.S. back then, and I think their vision was always we're going to keep selling CDs, and that's how we're going to monetize. But then all of a sudden, people were putting whatever inside their videos, in the background of their videos, like music tracks. They needed some audio in their music tracks. Sometimes they think that because I bought the CD, I own the rights to be able to distribute. But honestly, like when you really read the fine print, when you buy a CD, it's only for personal use. Only you can't share it, you can't broadcast it, you can't use it on the there are some fair use cases, like again, if it's for like a documentary or something, it's okay. But for almost anything else, especially for YouTube, for user-generated content, you can't put that content, you can't put those audio tracks in there. But back then, with the music labels in the US, the first decision they always took was actually lawsuits. It wasn't trying to see if there was a way to be able to see what if they're going to create the next like streaming audio or something. It was just, we have to preserve our ability to just sell CDs. And so when a service like YouTube comes around, or I think back then a lot of the user sharing networks out there, the P2P networks out there, like the first thing that they did against that was to make sure that they were able to attack that with lawsuits. And there was very little that YouTube could do to defend that. There are things called audio fingerprinting, so you can do within, back then, about 10 seconds of a YouTube video, and you can automatically tell that this video has an audio track from, whatever, say Lady Gaga in it. And then you can kind of look up, but it gets really complicated really quickly about, okay, so what if you know that this is by Lady Gaga? You have to know where the viewer is coming from, where the, who owns the distribution rights for this song, this artist, in what country, by what IP address. And it was impossible. So the other option, but we could tell the record labels that own Lady Gaga, like, we detected that a video has your song in it. What do you want us to do with it? And the two options were you can keep it up and then we'll share revenue with you. But because YouTube didn't have any revenue, there was no way to share anything. So their only option really was to take down any of the videos that they got. But that meant that, because it was hurting CD sales, but that just means like every single YouTube video that had music in the background was going to eventually get taken down. So we had to, it was all the lawsuits coming in that we had to sell it. And that was the whole reason that like the entire talk with Yahoo and Google and the decision to go with Google was like all in, like, I don't know if they're like, it was all in less than like 5 days that we made that decision from the time that we decided to sell to when we announced it after the close of market on a Monday. We did all the, like we met with Jerry Yang and the Yahoo team there's like a Denny's restaurant. I don't know if there's Denny's in Taiwan. Anyway, it's like a 24/7 eatery that we decided to meet up at because we didn't want to have ourselves seen on the Yahoo campus. And then we thought that Jerry and Terry Semel at the time, who was the CEO, they didn't want us to be seen on the YouTube offices. And so we just thought nobody's going to recognize us at Denny's. So we decided to do all the conversations at Denny's, again, talking with Google. Eric Schmidt at the time, Larry was there. We met at the same Denny's, different days, but the same Denny's. And then eventually just having to make that decision. And I think going with, it was hard. I would say like if it was just based on value alone, Yahoo was probably, I think it was like $200, $300 billion. And Google was still getting started back in 2005. It wasn't monetizing nearly as much back then. So if it was just for pure raw valuation and value, that was going to be Yahoo at the time. I mean, I think it was, there was a slight dip, but we all thought it was a dip, not a permanent down for Yahoo. But Google, they ended up being, I mean, there was one thing that they decided on. There's one clause that's usually in these acquisition contracts, which is before. So there's the announcement of the acquisition, but it takes a few weeks for it to close before everything is reviewed and making sure that it's not killing off competition, it's not creating a monopoly. So it takes a while for it to actually cross over the finish line. There's one clause in there that says if there's any big sort of traumatic events that happen, the acquirer can back off out of that deal. And with Google, we said you have to take this clause out because we knew that once we made the announcement about the acquisition, lawsuits were going to come in from Universal, EMI, Sony. We said the same to Yahoo. Yahoo wasn't willing to take out that clause because I think they also knew that as soon as that announcement was made, that was going to come in, and they didn't want to lose their acquisition of YouTube. But Google was willing to take out that clause. And to be honest, like that was the main reason that we went with Google. We had to, because legally, we already knew Universal was gonna come in the lawsuit. They had already threatened, so yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think that was a very good decision because during that time, we realized there comes another big challenge for staff because probably in the first year, right, there's a lot of lawsuit for YouTube, so it's very difficult for a new staff to handle this situation. So probably sometimes you should decide who can help you to continue this. Otherwise, YouTube, we will never hear about news right now. Right? So I think it's very important. Sometimes, I can show you my experience. Sometimes, for some founders, they just their company just like their baby. They don't want to set it up, right? They just want to hold it and then just like take care of him. But sometimes you are not be able to handle or face all these challenges. Otherwise, your baby will die, right? So this is not a good decision for the company. So in that case, I think you really made a very good decision for this for YouTube. So right now we can continue use it, right? even in the university continue use it. So I think this is a very important experience sharing because it's a kind of comes from the founders. Otherwise, we don't realize the real reason because everybody just say why use so loud YouTube. You just keep it just as your baby you want to raise it up. So sometimes you need to make a good decision for your company. Otherwise, your data change outside is very difficult for us to do. So,
but even Google, I think they they could have tried to monetize YouTube much earlier, and it took them 2 years. I think even 2 years after the acquisition, by 2008, we were still not making money for Google. Like it was still, like at some people, I think back even in 2008, 2 years after the acquisition, we're still wondering, was this the right thing for Google to be doing? Because it wasn't, there was as soon as that deal closed, there was $1 billion lawsuit coming in from Viacom, which was, they own a lot of the Comedy Central content that was on YouTube. There's that Viacom lawsuit that they had to solve, and I think like Google still tried to, I think, prioritize the end users. Before they could have, if they wanted to, figure out ways to inject these pre-rolls, like 30-second ads in front of all the videos, and they could have made a lot of money on that because the CPM rates on video ads is a lot higher than on text ads. But they still waited 2 years to kind of figure out what is the best user experience. And I was still at Google when we were having those discussions, and I had to say like that was good that I think in general Google still tries to do. Or I would say they prioritize, I think, their users and their user experience still more than whatever the quarterly Wall Street numbers are going to be. But I think it's a long-term investment because long-term that means that people will continue to stick around and use the service if you are paying attention to them, rather than if the first thing you do is try to see if there's a way to pump up your quarterly revenue numbers at the cost of potentially losing out on all the content creators and the viewers and the users.
So the other thing is that because during that time this is a very big decision for YouTube, right? So during that time I just wondering whether the chat also has a consensus with you, or you have to argue with about the decision you made? Before or after? Before or?
Yeah. No, there are so many stories, but that one, there was another venture capitalist involved with it. So there was Sequoia Capital that was an investor in YouTube, and they have a clause in their investment which says that, well, there are a few clauses when it comes to acquisitions. If you take money from Sequoia, they say you can't even talk about an acquisition if it's less than $100 million. So I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I think that there were some offers earlier on. But if you take money from Sequoia, you can't even talk to them for if it's under $100 million, right? But in terms of Sequoia, and Sequoia is behind, they're by far the venture capital firm in Silicon Valley with the highest returns, right? And the number of unicorns that they're behind is far more than anyone else there. They didn't want to sell. Even for 1.2, 1.65, 2 billion, they didn't want to sell. Their option only for us was we're going to go public, and we'd rather lose 10 YouTubes for one IPO of YouTube that can go for $100 billion. But we turned their $10 million into something like $500 million in a matter of a few months. But still, they wanted the IPO route. The only way we were able to persuade them was when Chad, the other co-founder, and I sat down in a board meeting and just told them, look, if we don't go forward with this acquisition offer right now, by next week, we're going to quit working at YouTube. There's no more. It was kind of a live or die survival thing with YouTube that they didn't know, and it was kind of the pushing them to the point where they had to agree that, okay, we're ready to move forward. But at the same time, I would also say that the reason why Sequoia is such an amazing venture capital firm is that as soon as they agreed that it was okay to sell the company, we got calls from Google and Yahoo because they sit on the boards of all the companies that are, they sit on the board of Google, they sit on the boards of Yahoo. So I gotta say, like, as soon as we convinced them, we're grateful that Sequoia was involved because they were able to get the right contacts on the M&A teams in these companies to make that acquisition offer.
Yeah, I think this is very important because the students here, they are so lucky because our vice president have this event and have you here to share with all the experience because I believe during that time you don't have any lesson from university teaching you how to deal with the VC and how to still make a decision for acquisition. So how did you learn the skills?
Well, I mean, like, yeah, I think we had to kind of figure it out. I mean, like, lessons learned while we're doing it. When we got the offer letter from the proposal for the investment from Sequoia, like one thing that I learned afterwards is that you should always talk to 2 VCs, not just one. Because the day that letter was supposed to close, where if we went forward with Sequoia, it was something like it was for $3.5 million for, I think it was like 30% of the company, but then we get the call from Sequoia that says like there was an internal meeting with all the partners, and while we love your company, the partners are against moving forward with it unless we can get 40% of the company. And that was a day before the deal was supposed to close, when I was still paying for everything on my own credit card. So I wanted the deal to close, but we didn't talk to anybody else. And so we ended up talking to another VC right away. They ended up offering a better offer for more money, less equity than Sequoia. We went back to Sequoia to say, okay, thank you, like we're gonna move forward with this other offer instead. Sequoia then had to come back and then say, okay, sorry, we talked again with our partners and we decided that it's okay, the original numbers. But then that time we actually had still a better offer. So then we were able to say, we still don't want to move forward with this. And they ended up taking, like, it was 25% for $3.5 million. So it was lower than their, if they had just not asked for more, they would have gotten a better deal than asking for more and then having us go through all the other talking to another VC, coming back, and everything. They ended up getting less. But, things like that, I think you only learn after you do it once. Now, if you were to start something, you have to talk to at least 2 or 3 VCs to get a better deal.
Yeah, I think it's very important if you really want to have a startup and you will face this kind of challenge. You need to consult some experienced guys to give you some good advice. It's important. So actually, for someone who really want to have a startup, actually, the PayPal mafia actually is a kind of legacy for them, right? You are one of the mafia, and you have worked with, for example, many different guys there. For example, the most famous Elon, right? And Peter Thiers and a lot of Chad Hurley and everybody. So can you just share us with us because among them or even you have a special personal characteristic to have this kind of taking risk or just move forward without considering or something that we can just learn from all your friends.
Yeah. I think a little bit of the latter. I think even if I had the idea for YouTube, whenever in 2005, let's say, I think without that experience of 5 to 6 years at PayPal and going through everything from the dot-com crash to its IPO to like the acquisition by eBay to like the competition with eBay, but knowing like at the end of it all that it was still possible to have a successful company. And if I didn't go through that, and I'm going to say like all the people that you mentioned from the PayPal Mafia, like I think like Reid Hoffman from like LinkedIn, from Max, who just started like Affirm, Elon, all those companies that have actually come out of it. It was I think to be able to have that experience with that many risks and that many kind of pitfalls along the way, but to still be able to navigate and to still come out with a company that was successful, I think that gave everybody there just the confidence to look, if you have another idea, the best ways to not try it, to actually do something and try it. And so all those, the PayPal Mafia companies, they all started in pretty much around the same time. Like if you look at the start dates for all those companies, it's around that 2004, 2005 time, because I think that was a big time when eBay took over PayPal, and the way that they did that acquisition was that they let go of pretty much all of the senior executives at PayPal. And so everybody was, they had just gone through the experience of PayPal, and they were still, I don't know, pretty young, and I think they were all pretty ambitious to want to try and do something else. So that's when all those new ideas started in 2005.
Yeah, so I think it's very important because even we call it a PayPal Mafia, but actually it's kind of a very close friends, and they just always sharing idea with each other, and everybody encouraging each other. How about you? You can just find your friends can do that. Why I cannot do that? So I just move forward. I think it's very important. And the other thing is not the environment, right? Because you told us that you just went through the Bay Area because during that time you think it's a good ecosystem to have this kind of to raising the staff and also just providing the fund support or just a technical support. So I think probably it's very difficult to copy even in not to mention in Asia, in Japan, in Taiwan, but even in the United States, even for Chicago, it's not very easy to copy. So, but right now we have many students. We are right now in Taiwan. So, any suggestion about this? Can we create an ecosystem, or if we want to have a staff, we need to connect with the Bay Area or Boston, or just try to do something in our environment?
No, I think like. So, I mean, it's interesting because it's been living here in Taiwan since like 2019, right? And so it's been trying to like look at like why there haven't been as many successful startups in Taiwan. Like in Silicon Valley, like so many, like a disproportionate amount of startups there are actually started by Taiwanese Americans, right? And not just like startups, but even things like NVIDIA and AMD are run by Taiwanese Americans. They have like Twitch and YouTube. They're all started, disproportionate amount of them are actually Taiwanese Americans. Yet, like when we come back to Taiwan, we're wondering like what in the last sort of decade or 2 decades have been, I think on a global level, like how many of these whatever unicorns have actually been created here in Taiwan. And it's not nearly as high. And then the question is, well, then what's the reason for it? It can't just be a flight to California that makes all the difference. What are all the other things that like differentiate Silicon Valley? And it's been, I think, an interesting 4 or 5 years here in Taiwan to kind of learn what the differences are. But I think also after living in Silicon Valley for 20 years, I think I started underappreciating. I didn't appreciate as much what Silicon Valley had to offer until you move out of Silicon Valley. Like even just the fact that you could talk to multiple VCs, they're all on one road, Sand Hill Road there in Silicon Valley. So if you wanted to talk to as many of the VCs you want, everybody's on one road. If you want to, again, talk to, and if you have to sell quickly to Google or They're Santa Clara's and they're in Mountain View. They're pretty close to each other. It's you can meet the founders of all these companies and discuss the acquisition cost in person the day right after each other. And so I think that's some of it. But I think I think part of it also is just like I think in the U.S. I think when we were starting or any of the startups, I don't think it's just an idea. And you're not thinking about like things like target audience and where you're going to be launching this, what language you're going to be launching in. You just don't even talk about it because of course you're going to be launching in English, and of course you're going to be launching it for the U.S. market, and that's it. The rest of the world will just follow if it's good enough. I think like it's much harder to do that, as I'm realizing, like when you're not in the US, when you have to start thinking like, do you want to launch the first version in, like if it's in Taiwan, do you want to launch, where do you want to establish the company? Do you establish it in Taiwan, or do you establish it as a Delaware C Corp, S Corp? Like if you want to establish this, a lot of things like equity, like do you want to grant your employees like equity? But then I think the big questions are around the product. It's like, should it be in, Chinese first, or and a lot of companies, they do Chinese first and then think that if it works well, if it grows well, then maybe V2 will be a translation. But I think like there's usually a far larger jump is required than just translating. It's not just language that differentiates the product. I think like something that works well in Taiwan, it's not just translating the language. It'll naturally work well everywhere else in the world. And I think that's so different from being in Silicon Valley. And then I think in general, like if you're then thinking about launching outside of Taiwan first, then you really need to have, I think like a senior team or co-founders that actually understand that market well. Because if you've never been living outside of Taiwan for a long period of time, you're almost building like a consumer product for a user that is not you. Like you wouldn't be using this product because it wouldn't make sense. I think it, again, it's different across different kind of products. In the hardware space, semiconductor space, it's going to be the same. The semiconductor is going to work the same regardless of what language you speak. But as you start getting more into the consumer side of things, then it really starts mattering what the daily routine is and things like language.
Yeah, so that's why sometimes just arguing probably in Taiwan why does the semiconductor industry do quite well, because it's kind of there's a hurdle of the language or something like that, because in Bay Area the default language is English, right? Mm-hmm. But I think there's a common consensus is that if you really want to do some stuff, you need to have a global view. I think it's very important because in the United States, you always think the product will be sold worldwide, right? Not only in a state, a specific state, or just in the United States. But sometimes in Taiwan, probably you have limited by the global view, so it's a kind of problem. So probably you can just encourage all the newcomers, if they want to have a startup, they just have a global vision. For a vision of how their products or their service, right?
I mean, I remember being when in Silicon Valley, there were a few startups that were from like Singaporean entrepreneurs, or there were a lot actually from entrepreneurs from Israel. And the way that they would structure it would be that the co-founders would have to live in Silicon Valley, and then every night at 11:30 p.m., they would have a daily call with their team that's actually based back in Israel. And I think like that way you have presence in Silicon Valley when it comes to things like partnerships and if there's any like M&A acquisitions, if it's to talking to investors for board meetings, VCs, you have someone there, and then you can still work with the team. And then as long as you have those daily calls back and forth, then it's not remote. I would say like that structure has worked out very well for Singaporean companies as well as for the companies that are based with a strong presence in Israel, and then I think also because of the history there, then the VCs have also over a period of time felt more comfortable investing in companies based out of Israel or companies based out of Singapore. But I think like that's still relatively new for Taiwan to try.
So I think I will answer the last question, and later we will open the question to the audience. My last question is that because it's a kind of unique experience for you, because you have a research education here, also in the United States. Right now we have many students here, so if they really want to follow your step in their future, when they have their own prototype or a company. So in addition to the education here, do you have any suggestion for them if they want to pursue their ambitions about how to start? What else that do they need to do if you during the university stage?
Oh, at the university stage. Well, yeah, just go to sleep, wake up tomorrow, go to class. I don't know. But I do think like if you do have like an idea, and I don't know if you have an idea, but if you do have an idea, like I remember when I was trying to decide whether or not to leave PayPal at the time, and what was that, 2000? So I think I was probably like 26, 27 at the time, and in the US, usually the retirement age is around 59 and a half when you can cash in your 401k that you're, whatever, with every paycheck. And I remember at the time thinking like that's going to be a long time to just continue to work at PayPal. And if I have this idea, like I'm going to just really regret if I don't, even if it fails, I just want to at least have said that I tried to do this, right? And I think that was the reason that I started it. And the recommendation, especially, not everybody should do it, but if you do have like an idea, like the opportunity cost is not very high to like if it's a good idea, it's going to take off. It's a bad idea, 3 months, 6 months, you're going to know it's a bad idea. So just try it. And of course, if it succeeds, that's great, that's a win. But even if it fails, like at least there's no regret that like you had this idea all along, and you're looking back when you're cashing out in 59 and a half, like when you're cashing out of your 401k, wishing that you actually did that. And so I think everybody that has an idea, they should at least try it once. Fail or succeed, that almost doesn't matter. It's just a part of like the career path. And there are so many new experiences that you get from doing a startup that you'll just never ever get in a typical normal career. So that's just, those experiences are, I think, worthwhile on their very own.
Yeah, I think it's a very good example for us because you want to pursue the career of the start, building the startup. Actually, I think it's a very important thing. It's just a good idea and just go try, right? And do your best to make it successful. I think it's a very important thing because all the different time and different situation, probably you have a different challenges. So you just try to learn lesson from some experienced guys and just find a good advisor. And the only thing you can do is just do your best, right? To try, yeah. So I think today we just learned a lot of lessons from Steve, and we just left some times for the audience. And today we will do either way. You can just raise your hand in the traditional way and just ask a question for Steve. And the other thing is that we can just do some digital way. You can just scan the QR code just behind us. You can see the QR code, right? If you don't want to ask a question by yourself, you can just scan the QR code because right now tonight we will do it digitalized. You will see even the fireplace is a digitalized version, right? So you can just try to scan the QR code and we will see the questions and just open the time for the audience.
好，所以大家想问题的时候，我先简单的讲1-2分钟。就刚才Steve 在分享的时候，各位可以看到，一开始的时候他就说跨领域的合作很重要，对不对？需要有人有技术的，要找自己有技术，有好想法，要有技术，要有做商品 development， 要有做 management。那所以有各种不同的跨领域的结合之后，它才能够形成一个 team。然后你要有很多的朋友，好的环境，对不对？不管在矽谷也好，在台湾也好，在哪里都好，你要有好的朋友，能够帮助你一起来协助你 develop 你的这个产品，开创你的这个事业。 然后他讲了一个很重要的事情，最后讲的这一段前面也讲过嘛，就是那个好的想法要赶快努力的去try。那你们年轻的时候，那个大家年轻的时候，其实现在大家都很年轻啊，你也很年轻啊，那个时间很长，失败的 cost 没有那么高啊，所以要有勇气，把握好的机会，把你好的想法试试看。然后这个不用怕失败，因为他刚才有特别讲到一件事情是说，失败常常是你累积经验的开始，累积经验，失败的经验帮助你将来可能会成功嘛，失败为成功之母，是不是？这我们很小的时候都在学这句话，但是每一天都在创投业或在这个新创业在发生这些事情，那所以好几个重要的点，那他都有分享到。然后现在问题开始出来了，我要退场。来。
Thanks for coming from our meeting. And is there any question raised from the audience? You want to raise your hand?
Hello. This is Charlie from the Taiwan Tech. I'm a master's student, and I would like to ask Steve that back to the time you create YouTube with Chad and George, and how you guys convince the engineers or some other guys to join you. Do you have any tips or steps?
I mean, like alluding to it earlier, right? I mean, I think that it's just really to tell them that at that point it was already showing some of the early metrics, and so it was really, I mean, a few things like we were. The network we had were really just PayPal engineers. PayPal was going through that acquisition with eBay, and so a lot of people had already fully vested their stock, and they were looking to do something else. YouTube, the early metrics were showing that it was growing very, very quick. But I think it was to tell the engineers like there is a lot of risk in joining YouTube now, but like you kind of can guarantee them that whatever the outcome, the experience is going to be a good one. And so there was never a guarantee that they're going to come out with an acquisition by Google. But the guarantee was that you're going to have a lot of fun in the next 6 months if you work at YouTube.
Okay, so my question today is, by the way, I'm an international business freshman. And my question is, I personally find it really difficult to work with smart people because they all have many opinions and they always think their opinions is the best. And I really wonder how you and fellow co-founders of PayPal managed to establish this company and collaborate with each other so well. Any tips since we're not Elon Musk?
I think at least I think in Taiwan it's a little bit easier. Like I think Silicon Valley engineers are some of the hardest people to manage in this entire world, because every one of them is like a / engineer or something / entrepreneur. Like all of them, like just think that if we just did it this way, we would be doing a lot better. And I think at YouTube we didn't really have a product team. It was everybody had their daytime jobs, as an engineer, as a designer, as like on the legal side, on the marketing side, PR side, sales. But much later we had a product team. But early on, it was almost like encouraging everybody to be the product team. Like if you have an idea, I didn't believe early on that there were certain. You had to get a certain degree in order to come up with certain ideas. I tended to think that regardless of your background, you may actually have a good idea. So it was encouraging people to actually speak up if they did have a good idea. And then we would, and it didn't have to come from any one source. It could be like the person on the legal team that has like a good idea about YouTube. And we would listen to it and we would make sure that we have the opportunity to be able to work some of those out. And I think once the team starts believing that they're not just working for another company, but they're working like in a way on their own ideas, like when they're working on a product where they contributed some of the ideas to, that becomes part of, it's not just a job anymore. It becomes like their own company. And like the productivity that you get when like the team is completely like really part of that startup team rises so much, right? And I want to say like there were a lot of features that like we were able to push out in 1 or 2 days, and that we ended up having to pull back, and we lost time doing that. But overall, I thought that was so good for the general spirit of the team to be able to feel like they're every day when they're going to work, like they're working on something that they kind of own, rather than just working to help somebody else's idea come to fruition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, Steve. Thanks for your talk. I think early on you mentioned, certainly you mentioned your background in CS and Facebook's Mark just having the minimum requirement, skills requirement. Can you kind of elaborate for us on what is the minimum skill requirement? Like, and for those of us who are not CS majors, learn programming on our own, or even non-technical people, like how can we achieve like your level of success? And similarly, like how does your work experience at PayPal help? How essential is your work experience as an employee at PayPal help in starting your own business? And how essential is your tech career experience in helping you now being a tech investor? Thank you.
I think grouping that a little bit together, I do think that you at least until OpenAI is just able to do all the programming, developing for you, I think you still need, unfortunately, like just people with engineering backgrounds as co-founders of the company. I think it is pretty important that at least one of the co-founders has that technical background. You can have co-founders, but I think somebody needs to come in as that CTO role, because I think that's pretty important early on. And so I think if you don't have that background, like, and many people in Silicon Valley don't, they end up just, I think like many of these companies are formed by like ex-PayPal guys, or now like a lot of startups, for example, in Silicon Valley are being formed by like ex-Uber guys, and they've just collaborated and worked together for a number of years already, just like we had at PayPal. So we had an idea as to like who we wanted to hire and who we've worked with in the past. So for example, in the case of YouTube, the other co-founder and the CEO of YouTube was Chad Hurley, and I met Chad on like November 22nd, 1999. Like the first day that I got into Silicon Valley, I started working with him, and we worked together for 5 to 6 years before leaving and creating YouTube. And we had just done so much work together, and we knew that we collaborated well together. So by the time that we started YouTube, it wasn't even kind of a question. Like, okay, like I know that my background is on the engineering side, but there's no way that I'm going to be able to know how to figure out like what is the best UI UX for how to deliver this idea. But having worked with Chad for so long, like it was obvious that he was going to be that person, and I could just kind of blindly trust that he was going to be able to do it. But I think, to answer the question, I think engineer is still needed as a co-founder until we'll see where OpenAI goes.
Thanks, Steve. I just was curious about at that time, don't have the Google Cloud and AWS, and then you have to manage your own data center. Maybe at that time, don't have a Y Combinator, right? So no one teach you how to be a successful founder. And super curious about why is the magic in the PayPal mafia, and because a lot of founder in like group now is the CEO of the LinkedIn, the CEO of the Reddit, and I just checked the list. That was amazing. It changed maybe the entire information industry. So why is the magic in these people?
And I think of course, I think PayPal was one of the few companies that was able to get past the dot-com crash and survive and eventually go public. It was also competing with eBay the whole time. And so I think that a lot was learned from the team during that period. And then it was all around the same time, around 2004, 2005, when that eBay acquisition took place, that a lot of people had to leave and start something new. And it was, I think with the dot-com crash, it never really came back with investments until much later. So I do think that it was almost in 2004, 2005, a huge wave of people leaving PayPal that had just been as part of a successful startup, getting through all of these hurdles, and then having both the connections to other entrepreneurs within that PayPal network, as well as being able to kind of self-fundraise their next idea, at least in the sort of prototyping stages. And then I think through PayPal, PayPal was also funded by Sequoia Capital as well, and then even the head of Sequoia Capital US, at least right now, is also the CFO roll-off from PayPal as well. And so there was all these kind of networks, and I think that's pretty important to have especially at that time at Silicon Valley. But I would also say a lot. I don't know. I think a lot of it is luck, because there's nothing that. I don't know why. I don't think that should have been that many successful companies from PayPal, but because I think it is just like many other companies out there. I think with the only exception that it was all around that same time that they all had to leave and they are all willing to do something else. Thanks.
Hi, Steve. I'm William. Graduated from this school, accounting major, and I want to ask a question about mindset behind your two untypical decisions. One is that when Sequoia told you that, hey, you can have 1 billion IPO prices, and you opt for, no, I will sell my company to Google. Another question is that you choose Taiwan to make your startup under the condition that some geopolitical crisis, and Taiwan is not a hub for finance in Asia, for example, Hong Kong or Singapore. They are also Huarren, Mandarin speaking and English speaking condition. They are more like financial hub. Why would you choose Taiwan as your place to start your capital from? Thanks.
I think to that second question first, I think if everything else equal, no, Taiwan wouldn't be the first choice for a place to start a company. It wouldn't be second or third or fourth. I mean, it's not in the top 10, But I think being born in Taiwan and being Taiwanese, I'd love to be able to see something come out of Taiwan that's able to kind of, on two levels. One of them is on the foundation level, to be able to create more startups, to create that environment. I really do think that it needs to be led by example in a way that I think Silicon Valley, that first phase of, you can go back to maybe even 1980s, 90s with things like Sun Microsystems and Apple, but I think that I think a big part was when Netscape and when Yahoo in 1995, 1996, they were created. That brought in, at least for me, that convinced me that, okay, well, there's, if there were no Netscapes and Yahoos, I would not have gone to join PayPal. I would have stayed in the Chicago Bay Area. And I also think, again, like what we said earlier, if it weren't for PayPal and the experience to know that you can still go IPO and you can still go public even after a dot-com crash, I think none of these companies like LinkedIn and YouTube, we would have started that, because it would have just been hard. But I think through that experience, you just get more and more of that. And I hope that in Taiwan, it's just to be able to set the example, like that this is how you create a billion-dollar global brand, global company. I think not just for that company, but for the entire ecosystem here, it'll help convince other people that this is possible to do and this is the path to follow. And so I think it's so important to have at least that first group of companies that actually form. So I think that like it's been kind of I mean, I also think that it's going to be impossible to build another YouTube. It's a little too big. But I think, like, you know, along those same lines, like I think it would give me the same amount of like return on investments if I could do something in Taiwan to help the startup ecosystem here.
Thanks.
So Steve, there are some questions through the QR code. So they are all written asked in English. So you can just pick any one you want to answer.
Does everybody see this? No. Right?
It's okay. You can.
Okay, I'm not going to answer them. May I ask what you're going to do with your money? Well, that's may I ask is like no. The rise of Twitch. I think regarding Twitch, I know Kevin Lin, who started Twitch, is here, and he lives very close to me, but I really didn't know what Twitch was until much later after the acquisition. So, I mean, at least until the acquisition, no. I think probably the most. I think there's some, you know, threats to YouTube on a like a non-product basis, like just whether or not this is still going to continue this way in terms of like legal content, whether or not you can still continue to monetize. But in terms of like products and companies, I think the biggest threat to YouTube is probably TikTok right now.
Steve, I just actually the question I asked did the rise of Twitch post any threat to YouTube? So you're answering this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I said no because I'm not really sure what Twitch. But like I think nowadays with TikTok and short form content, I think YouTube Shorts had to come out, and in general, I do think that people, at least with the metrics and data, are showing that people are more and more interested in watching even shorter form content. Right?
So actually, I also realized noted there's a question they get asked whether there's a difference between the TikTok and the YouTube. So you say that probably TikTok is a kind of short video, and the YouTube content kind of longer, and you think that there's a big difference between these two, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think in some ways like TikTok is even like more addictive than YouTube. It's hard to give up the short form content. I think that I think YouTube, it creates a better the sort of economic returns for the creators. And so if you really want to start like a whole career, like my son was here, and like I remember going over to it was like their 5th grade class, and it was a room of like 12 students in the class. And like if you go around the room asking the students what do they want to do when they grow up, like 11 out of the 12 said they wanted to be YouTubers when they grew up. Like you can't really do that you can't get that level of monetization on TikTok. So I think like that'll be kind of interesting. But you know, things are growing so quickly with YouTube as well that I think like we're going to see as things change with just traditional media outlets, traditional channels, with how people are spending their time with Netflix, because ultimately it's sort of all these are competitive with one another. Right?
So the first question asking, what do you think is the most important thing to learn in a university?
How many votes did I get? Yeah. I think it depends on the role, right? I mean, it's again like I think that question, whether it's in the context of what's the most important thing to learn in universities, if you want to create a startup, or more general, like if you want to go to Silicon Valley, or more general. I mean, I think there are core things that you just have to learn. Like we kind of talked about earlier, like I don't know if there's like engineers and computer scientists here, but like you're not going to be able to build your whether it's at PayPal or YouTube, there's still there are some fundamentals that you just have to know to be able to build any of these things, whether it's an iOS app, whether it's an Android app, whether or not it's a web service out there. You're just going to have to know things like about how databases work and how data structures work and how network works. And these are the core things that you're just going to have to learn in order to be able to start the company. But I think what's interesting, like we talked about earlier, is some of the more hybrid majors that they're starting to do. And I think things that can combine together a little bit of the hands-on engineering learnings, but along with like something that's more on maybe on the business side, whether it's on the marketing side, that'll definitely help a little more. So you're not feeling like when you reach day one of the market, you're completely having to learn all these things using market experience rather than some of the things that you were able to learn in school.
And actually, there's another question probably in the introduction. They say that if a student with IT background, even the CS computer science background, which field do you think is promising for the future if they want to have a startup?
What fields are interesting out?
In your opinion?
I mean, I think like right now in many schools, like the number of applications like are just exploding with like computer science and engineering right now. But I think it would be really interesting what happens in the next even like 12 months, 18 months, 24 months with what AI is able to do. Because it's just like with again with kids now using like OK Google, like can you do 8 times 7 for me? Like in one side it's like you should learn the multiplication table, but on another side it's like, do we really need this in 8-10 years? And same thing a little bit on the engineering side, a little bit on so much of this is like there are companies that would have been great ideas because the problems are going to remain the same. It's about the solutions, and I think some of these solutions are going to be just completely done at nearly zero cost by AI solutions. And so again, like this is more personal, but as like an angel investor in Silicon Valley companies, I've kind of put a pause on things for 2023 because it's hard to know what is going to be possible and not possible with AI. So I guess if there's any companies to invest in, it would have to be something that's utilizing or expanding some of what we're seeing on the AI side of things.
Yeah, I think the first question probably asking why do you meet the like-minded? I think probably they just want to ask why did you choose Chet as your partner in the very beginning when you started YouTube?
No, I think that was good because that was almost without question because we had already had the 5-6 years working together and working on so many projects together and doing exactly the same roles that we had in the past. And so I think for a lot of Silicon Valley, it's not first time co-founders, but it's at least like co-founders with some experience shared somewhere else where they met. And so that helps to decide whether or not that's a good team that works together. Which one's the one? 32 votes. That's a good one. If an IT background student. What do I mean? If an IT background student tries to create a small startup, where do you see the opportunity? It's by anonymous, so I don't know who. I was like, does that just mean?
Just raise your hand. Is there questions? Okay, you can just explain your question.
Hi, Steve. I'm Jessie, and I'm senior major in psychology. And now I'm working in one startup from India as the market PM. But now I have opportunity to work in the Silicon Valley. But I know, like as I mentioned before, like because I'm not like very well like major, so sometimes it's really hard for me to like judge or recognize is that a good company for me to like just join to check another one. So for you, how would you like suggest me to recognize the good company or not in the future? Because you mentioned like the timing is really important. Thank you.
Thanks. I think it's like I think in like when I was doing a lot of investing, especially in angel investing, early stage. I mean, I think that the target market does have something. Like you do have to say that the target audience and target market is large enough for a company to be able to survive and do well. But I think there are so many pivots along the way for early stage companies, and so it almost becomes not as important as it's most likely that whatever idea that you're joining for an early stage company today, it will not be the same idea in 3 months and 6 months from now. So I believe that it's the more important thing to be judging whether or not you just have a good relationship, a good feeling with the co-founders and entrepreneurs, and like just have to kind of trust that the team is able to make good decisions about like if it is time to pivot, like that they don't hesitate and they will pivot, and they're making the right calls about the pivots, and knowing when not to pivot, when to pivot. I think like those are the key characteristics, whether or not these guys are gonna be the people that you could work closely with, rather than so much about the idea. Some of just about, again, like YouTube was a dating site, right, for a week. I mean, PayPal was like a Palm Pilot it was like a security app for a few months before they decided to open up it for payment. Facebook was so different. I mean, all these companies, they've had to pivot a lot until they've reached their current state. And so I think that it's important to find like the founders that are able to know when to pivot and to be able to trust that.
So there are several questions through the QR code. So the first one talking about the AI, right? And which one do you want to answer?
Any of these.
I think there's the last question. What do you think YouTube will be like in the next 10 years? I think easy for you.
That's a good question. I think that I think it'll be interesting because I think definitely like the where the general direction is headed is that I think the advertising monetization is going to follow wherever the eyeballs are going. The content creators are going to follow wherever the eyeballs are going. And so if all the eyeballs are on YouTube, that's where all the new content that's going to get created, all the new content's going to get uploaded, and then all the monetization is going to happen on YouTube. And it does mean that there's only 24 hours in the day, so it's going to be taking away from other sources. I think that we've already seen I think the traditional media, it's getting less and less channels. They can't afford to be able to create this content because the advertisers, the marketers, they're no longer willing to pay to be able to put their ads there because they know the eyeballs are in different places. And so I gotta say, like, I think unless something dramatically different happens, I think YouTube's just going to continue to grow as more creators go onto YouTube. Everything else is going to follow. 10 years is a long time, though, you know.
Yeah, actually, we are going to run out of time. So, any other burning question for the last one? Okay, please.
Hi Steve, I'm Jackie. I study industrial engineering and management, and now my year is senior. And also before I founded one educational startup before, yeah. And so one of my question is because I study in startup field for many kind of years. I met many entrepreneurs in Taiwan, maybe SRC or other like Xianru Fang or like Chen Ma or other just famous stars in Taiwan also. Then I'm really curious about that. If you think that Taiwanese stars entrepreneurs should go to Silicon Valley maybe for years or months before, because like many kind of entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley, and they just give me some lessons about the industry research there. So what I think is about they have more systematic insight from the fields more than maybe other people I just met in Taiwan. They maybe live in Taiwan for many years, but what I think the difference from their perspective is the knowledge and the experience for more systematic about the fields, tech fields, more and more complete insights experience is kind of more different to me. So it gives me some just some inspire that maybe I should just go Silicon Valley if I can like that, because I just think maybe the people there or the story experiences there will be so different because the mindset, the ecosystem is very different. So my important question from you is that if I want to get to know the Silicon Valley field or this ecosystem, all the startup fields, and I want to get on all of this and try to have some more important help for the startup afterwards, then how I think is the best approach to this? Like maybe it's go to the like master there, or then after that get some internship and just go to work the more formal way, or just maybe from Taiwan and just get some USA jobs there and just kind of get there, or even just start a company. And like Taiwan, like Heptabest founder, he just got applied to the YC coordinator and just get there 3 months. But it's so interesting that because I just in person asked it, what I think is the difference between like you go to Silicon Valley 3 months and go back. He said it's not a different, because he just getting the YC inside and just learning class and cooperate with the founders there. But he didn't just go out the Silicon Valley or CA. So I think it's not a difference, but I just think that maybe some more difference than that. So I just want to hear some perspective from you. Thanks.
I mean, I think it's difficult to create, the 23 million people that you have in Taiwan. Like, I do think that it's important to, it's just not enough people for a global idea, global app to be able to take place. I do think that you need to think from day one outside of Taiwan. But then I think it's also too difficult, I think, to just go to Silicon Valley for 3 months or 6 months and to expect that to be enough to be able to completely understand what you need to build for that environment. So I mean, I think the two things that I would say is like either try to build again something that's that's a lower level, more maybe focused on the hardware side of things, more on the enterprise kind of thing. So it almost doesn't matter as much what the consumer differences are between, say, the U.S. versus Taiwan. So that's one, like just focus on that. Then that you can almost do, like if you're doing something in like the healthcare space, like you could do that from pretty much anywhere. Or if you're building something in technologies that could be reapplied anywhere else in the world, I would say that's the way to do it. But if it's going to be something on the more consumer space, I think it's find a co-founder that's based in the Bay Area or that lives in Silicon Valley, and to be able to work with like just a co-founder that happens to actually be there. They'll just they'll be able to, just be directly connected with the network that you need outside.
So can I just mention that your point that should be getting there mostly is getting the ecosystem and be part of it, so you can feel and connect with all things inside. If you can't get into it, maybe many things you can just get informed or get the connection, maybe like that.
No, because I think that, I actually think it's not just getting into the ecosystem. It's actually like you need to have a co-founder that is a member of that target market. And so if you're trying to build for an audience outside of Taiwan, yet if you've never really been a part of that group, then it's going to be very difficult to make decisions that any other co-founder will be able to make instantly, because they're just building it for themselves, but you're not building it for yourself. You're building it for a target market that you're not a member of. And so my suggestion is you need to find a co-founder that's part of that target market. And it's better if they're in Silicon Valley, because they, again, are beyond that. They can provide the connections and the networks to what Silicon Valley can provide. I think in some ways, similar to what we were talking about earlier, I think the startups from Israel and the startups from Singapore, that's what they've been doing. And I think it's continued to demonstrate that seems to be working pretty well.
So the last question is that if we want to start for a great company, and should we just, how the thing is Silicon Valley can give us really cool visions based on that, or even if we're not in Silicon Valley, we can use another channel to get all the experiences, visions from that, and just we don't need to just really get into that and pay so much price. They are living there and just for a long time, and we can also connect with the entrepreneurs and also the stories or experiences between each other, or somehow work there and the connection, and we can also learn the visions. Or this is one perspective, and the other is we need to get in there and we can face and experience the 10 times faster the experiences there, because some Silicon Valley workers say that they're working in Silicon Valley or New York, it's 10 times more you can get the knowledge experiences than maybe Taiwan or other cities. So what is your perspective about this? Yes or no, like that?
Well, I think even if it's 1% faster, you should go, because if you really believe in what you're doing, you should optimize for whatever small thing. Forget 10 times faster, even if it's just 1.5 times faster. I think what's holding you back from moving there? If you want to be successful, then do everything that you can.
So thank you for your comment, and actually we ran out of time. So today we really appreciate the experience sharing and all of the advice from the Steve. So let's welcome our next speaker.
Thank you.
非常感谢陈世俊先生来跟我们做了这么好的分享，因为其实很难得20年在 Silicon Valley 的这个 experiences, and also he was saying that he's going to share his personal successful story and also the experiences for all Taiwanese. So that's pretty good because he has 这个小2的 level 的中文，但是我们非常高兴。他对台湾的这个感情的这个连结这么深厚，所以愿意回到台湾来跟大家一起努力奋斗。希望在台湾也能够建立跟这个其他地方一样好的，或是更好的这个environment，让我们的 ecosystem 创业的 ecosystem 可以变得更好哈。